Virtual summits are the most powerful online marketing tool available to grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and create an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. If you are ready to take your summit to the next level, then tune into the Virtual Summit Podcast with Dr. Mark T. Wade.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software and creator of the One Day Summit Formula. And I'm on a mission to help you, the summit host, get your summit out to the world in a powerful and impactful way. So let's get started. Welcome, Summit hosts. Dr. Mark T. Wade here, founder of Virtual Summit Software and your host on the Virtual Summit Podcast. I am super excited about today's episode, and you're going to see something a little bit different, but I think you're going to enjoy it. I'm joined here by my good friend, John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneurs on Fire. How you doing today, JLD?
I'm fired up to be here in my own studio down here in Puerto Rico, just surrounded by my friend and my Berkey right here. So life is good.
Well, we are very fortunate. We are in the paradise, the epicenter right now for entrepreneurs, which is where EO Fire headquarters is at. And we're fortunate enough to be here with the legendary entrepreneur himself of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And we're going to get into some really important information on virtual summits because, as many of you can probably imagine, JLD here is a highly sought after influencer to be a speaker on summits. So we're going to get a lot of great insights on how you, the summit host, can tap into influencers like JLD and increase your chances of getting them on your summit. Now, before we do that, John, let's actually talk a little bit more about you. Why don't you tell us something interesting about yourself, a little bit more about what you do with EO Fire for those who maybe have not heard of you yet?
Well, something that's pretty interesting is for 7 years now, I've been interviewing successful entrepreneurs, and actually for 5.5 of those 7 years, I did it every single day, 7 days a week. So I did 2,000 episodes in 2,000 days. And with that consistency and just commitment to putting in the reps every single day, I built my audience, which I lovingly refer to as Fire Nation, to over 1 million listens per month. And built my business, which is very small, lean, and mean, into a profit-generating machine with just myself, my lovely partner in crime, Kate, and a couple virtual assistants in the Philippines. We generate millions of dollars a year, and we keep millions of dollars a year. So we're not one of those companies that has gross revenues in the tens of millions, but then has net revenues of $100,000. So this is what I'm passionate about. This is why I love virtual summits, because you can do this so lean, so mean, and generate so much net revenue. It's just an exciting time.
It is an extremely exciting time. And John is the host of probably, in my opinion, one of the most successful podcasts out there. If you have not checked it out already, go check out Entrepreneurs on Fire, EO Fire here. Subscribe, listen. You're going to love it. I promise you that. So let's start to jump into some of the meat and potatoes around summits. You are requested on a lot of summits. Can you give me an estimate on how many summits you think you've actually spoken on?
So I've spoken on well over 100 virtual summits, easily. I've spoken on over 1,000 at this point, podcasts. And a lot of those podcasts have actually then turned those interviews into virtual summits as well. So it's probably in the hundreds of virtual summits. And I get asked so often to be on summits that I actually have a Google canned response in my Gmail that just says virtual summit response. And we're going to be getting into a little bit more of that later, because that gets used upon people that approach me the wrong way. The people that approach me the right way, which we'll be talking about, they don't get that canned response.
The canned response probably gets used more often than not, right?
Absolutely. I'd say 80%.
Unfortunately, that is usually across the board. When you're reaching out to influencers, they're going to be telling most of us summit hosts no more often than not. But don't let that be discouraging, because we're going to get into some of the hows and the whys to overcome those no's, or even to set up the initial yes. So does one summit pop out in your mind as one of your favorites for any reason?
Absolutely. I'd say it was about 14 months ago. I was approached by AWeber, and they were doing a summit all around email and email conversion, which made a lot of sense. And so what AWeber did was they kind of went to top people in different industries, whether it be Instagram, LinkedIn, podcasting, YouTube, etc. And they asked people who are tops in their industry to come on their summit and talk about how they utilized their authority, their audience, their influence in those different platforms to grow their email list. So AWeber did it right. They put funds behind it, and we'll get into that more, of course, later. But that was my most favorite one in recent memory.
I remember that summit. The reason I remember it is it was a one-day summit. It was a one-day summit.
It was one day.
You can look into episode 6 to find more about the one-day summit formula, but I do really recall that summit.
Did a good job.
What was with that? What was one of the reasons that you actually enjoyed it so much? But besides just the fluency of it, was there a process that AWeber had, and who from AWeber actually reached out to you?
So it was their head of marketing, their CMO, their chief marketing officer, reached out, and it was a very direct and professional way right from the beginning. So you could just tell from that first email that came in that this was going to be a white glove experience, that they were going to cater to me, that they were going to make sure that this was as easy and enjoyable experience as possible. And they saw that through all the way. And the most appealing thing about their initial pitch was kind of what I alluded to at the beginning of my kind of rant about AWeber, which is they said, John, we're only going after one single podcast influencer. You're our first choice. We're not going to have anybody else in the podcasting space that's going to talk specifically about how to get email signups through that platform of podcasting. We want you to be it, individual, alone. And I said, that's cool.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really cool concept. And just to make a clarification here for everybody listening in, we'll have links to that one-day summit as well as everything else we're going to be talking about in this episode over at the show notes, podcast.virtualsummits.com. So you can check that out.
Virtual Summits software makes hosting a summit easier than ever. The only software in the world designed specifically for hosting a summit lets you set up a summit in a matter of hours with no tech skill or team needed. You can try out the Virtual Summits software free at virtualsummits.com. But hurry, this is a limited offer.
So let's get into, from a speaker's perspective, what's the benefits for you to speak on other people's summits?
So it's similar in a lot of ways to benefits of speaking at an actual live conference, a live event. There's a lot of promotion behind both of those, live events, virtual summits. So now you have your face, your name, your brand associated with other face, name, and brand people who are doing great things. So the YouTube individual for the AWeber Summit was a great YouTuber. Maybe it was like a Casey Neistat. And the person on Instagram was a massive influencer, and so on and so forth. So I was getting my face, my brand, my name put up in lights, so to speak, next to all of those other names, and just kind of having that commingling and cross-promotion that was happening as AWeber was targeting their audiences, my audiences, with the same banner, with the same promotion, just made it really make sense.
So you get a lot of exposure from that. You're getting attention to your brand, so you continue to stay first and foremost in people's minds. Were you able to generate leads from that summit and these other summits you're on? Is that a typical?
Yeah, I would say that leads definitely happened more indirectly for this summit. I think that if I had wanted it, or I'd wanted to be more strategic about it, I could have probably generated more leads myself. But what I kind of looked at this specific summit as a great opportunity is something that you and I have both taken a lot of advantage of over the years, specifically the last couple of years, and that's the power of Instagram. So now here I am, I have custom-made banners and logos of the summit I'm about to be on, and now I can use it in my stories and my feeds. And what does that tell your audience? People that follow you, people that are stumbling across you, they're seeing that, hey, you're staying relevant, you're being associated with the best of the best, you're producing great content, you're still there. Because you and I have both seen this many times. You have this shooting star that comes up, and then they just kind of burn out. And you're like, whatever happened to so-and-so or so-and-so or so-and-so? And we could fill in those blanks real easy because it happens all the time. And you're like, where do those people go? Well, they just stopped being relevant in this current day and age. And I'm telling you, with the great content and these up-and-coming entrepreneurs, like if you're not consistently having your face, your name, your brand in the lights, out there in the universe associated with other people doing great things, then your star is going to start to diminish as well.
So true. So true. So you've heard me talk about this many times, is that it is a benefit for influencers as well as speakers in general to be on your summit. So we can kind of get over that, even like that kind of self-consciousness we have when reaching out to these influencers, because everyone needs to promote themselves at some point or another. So there is benefits for the speakers as well. So let's get into some of the actual aspects of speaker recruitment. First off, can you tell me about one of your best experiences being recruited as a speaker, other than AWeber, like as far as the process? And then we're going to also come back and talk about the not to-dos.
Yeah. Okay. A great experience that I had was somebody who we're both actually good friends with, and that's Chandler Bolts. So he was doing a great summit. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a self-publishing school success summit. And it was a number of years ago at this point, which is why my memory of the actual name is a little hazy. But what's not hazy is the actual experience. You know, Chandler, he just did everything right. He followed me on social media. He was commenting on my posts. He was liking, my Instagram. He was sharing my stuff with other people. He came on my podcast and delivered great value. He had me on his podcast. Like, he just became a person that was always reaching out to me. John, how can I help you? John, what can I do to promote what you're doing? Like, let me know. He just became this person that was just consistently adding value to my world and the social media and the podcasting. And by the way, I was in the process of writing books too. So I was able to tap his knowledge, which he said, hey, let's jump on a call, dude, anytime. Use my knowledge, use my experience, use what I've learned up to date, and I'll help you publish this book correctly. And he did just that, completely free, just to help me, become better at the publishing process of my book, where I was an expert at podcasting. He was an expert in publishing books. So being able to tap into that. And then when he reached out to me for his virtual summit, it was almost like a no-brainer. It was almost just like, well, here's a guy who's been liking my stuff on social media, who's been, commenting, who's been engaged, who's been sharing my content, who's been of value to me, who's given me his time, his knowledge, and hasn't really asked for anything. He's built up what we like to call a lot of social credibility. And he had done that. He built up a lot of this social credibility for me. And then when he reached out, it was kind of an easy yes. And he did it also the right way, where he said, John, I'm not going to ask 15 podcasters to come and talk about how to self-publish a book and then use your platform as a podcast, to promote that or wherever it might be. I want you to kind of be the face of that platform, of that podcast. And again, because he got specific that I was filling a niche that was needed to be filled in that summit. And then once that niche was filled, then he was going to move on to the next niche, and he wasn't going to kind of stack people in there. It just made a lot of sense. And I knew that he was the kind of person, through seeing what he had done through his podcast, through his course, just through my interactions with him, he was going to do this summit right. He had proven himself as somebody that works hard, that's committed, that's, proud of what they do. Of course, it's easy to know a company like AWeber is going to, because they have a big established brand. They have a lot of money. I mean, they're going to do stuff right. But when an individual, when a Chandler Bolt, or when a fill in the blank individual / entrepreneur reaches out to you, and they don't have that brand behind them, but they don't have that marketing power, it's a big question mark. So you have to prove yourself as a person of value and someone that's going to make sure that this is a white glove experience, professional the whole way through.
Yeah, and to add a clarification or some additional insight into this, most of us know Chandler now as the massive success he is, but when he ran his first summit, he really was relatively unknown. He was just getting started. His business had not taken off. You probably had not heard of him before that.
No,
right?
hadn't heard of him.
So this is great information, great insight for you summit hosts out there, to let you know that you don't have to already have a super established brand or name to be able to get some of these influencers on your summit. And JLD just gave a perfect example of that. I want to ask now the other side of this. Can you remember, does anything stick out to you with a bad experience you've had being on a summit?
Well, I'll first answer that question by just saying a bad experience of somebody reaching out to me to be on their summit that was just like an absolute no, was just, they got that Google canned response, of course, because they sent me a canned email. It was so boilerplate. I mean, it was basically, hello, insert name. I mean, of course, they put my name there. I mean, I wouldn't have been shocked if they didn't with his email, but it was just such a generic email. I honestly think the email even said something like, we have other entrepreneurs like so-and-so, John Lee Dumas. And I was just like, well, you don't have John Lee Dumas yet. Come on now. Like, let's not, go ahead promoting me. And I was like, all credibility was lost at that point for me, because I'm like, well, I know you don't have me yet because I haven't said yes. So, I mean, just that first email, you're never going to be able to get that taste out of somebody's mouth. It's that first impression, that first email is so critical, is so meaningful. But to answer your real question, which was, a virtual summit that I said yes to, was, just listen, seemed like it was a good opportunity. It was a good topic. Got on, and it was just a disaster from the beginning. The woman's audio was just a mess. Her internet connection was like so weak. She was using some sketchy Wi-Fi that we kept chopping up and doing all this thing. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we're in Puerto Rico right now. The power could go out at any second. So I'm understanding of things like that. But she was just like, oh yeah, I'm like in the coffee shop and the Wi-Fi is not good. I'm like, come on, like, find a place where you can just like at least have a good chance of having good, solid, hardwired in internet. Like, make it happen. And her questions were scattered, and she was scattered. And then I just remember like the delays kept coming afterwards, where like she was supposed to launch on this day and she pushed it back. And then you just knew that when it went out, it was just like, if I was confused as a speaker, like in the know, like forget about anybody who was like thinking at some point they were going to watch this content. So that thing went out. It was a total flame out. And I never like had any people contact me from that or anything.
And you would probably never agree to do anything else with her.
Can't do it. I mean, time is everything. Time is everything. And listen, I booked an appointment. I had email exchanges back and forth with this woman. I mean, there was very valuable time that I can say now was just pure wasted on that, and never again.
So just to clarify, a couple gems that JLD has been throwing down for us that you guys may have just like, because he's been throwing so many, may have missed. One, being very specific and niche on setting up your summit. That's key. When you're reaching out to an influencer, they don't want to talk generalities, and they also don't want to know there's going to be 1,000 other people in the same kind of category. So if you can find one person, start with one person on a very specific or niche topic, it increases your likelihood of being able to get an influencer on it.
And they're special, so let them know they're special.
Absolutely. Make sure, and this is another key element right there, is actually take the time and make sure that they know that you actually care about them. They're, just like everybody, you're a human. You want people to make you feel like you're important. You want them to feel like they're valued and important as well. Being prepared. This is so important. At an influencer level, they don't have time. They don't have a lot of time, period. And their promotional calendars, their opportunities are already limited. So if they can even sense, like if they're even worried or nervous, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not going to be prepared or organized, it's just easier for them to say no, right?
People are looking for a now. They're looking for a no. Don't give them the opportunity.
That's a great point right there. Like at that level, they are looking for a no. So if you can bring your A game and you can show them, one, that you've done the research, that they are the perfect person, you value their time and their expertise in this area, show them that you are prepared and organized, and then also make sure you stick to your deadlines, to your words. That's the first way to kind of lose trust, especially with an influencer. If you say you're going to do something, whether it's getting them the email copy on time or getting them their social media shareables. Now, everybody has some mistakes, and as long as you're transparent with them, you can probably overcome that. But those are some gems that he just gave that we just kind of glossed right through. But make sure you've written those down, because if those are the fundamentals right there. If you haven't done those, these next insights we're going to get into are probably not even worth going through.
Well, to clarify one thing, and I thought Mark knew better, I don't throw gems. I drop value bombs.
I have virtual summit gems. He's got the value bombs, so we're going mining.
You can throw gems. I can drop value bombs. All right. Life is good.
Perfect. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is go into kind of right here. Actually, this is something that everybody needs to be aware of, and that we take for granted as summit hosts when we're reaching out to influencers or any entrepreneurs in general. Whether it is a speaker or you're asking for a sponsor or an affiliate, they have stuff on the line. So what's on the line for you when you actually say yes or you're agreeing to be on somebody's summit?
Just like all the benefits I was talking about, where it's your name in the lights and you're associated with great people, it's the same on the opposite ends. Like that's what's on the line is your reputation, your respect, your integrity, people actually trusting the fact that something that you attach your name and your brand to is going to deliver good value. And I love that Warren Buffett quote that it takes 20 years to build a great reputation, but it takes 5 minutes to ruin it. And it's so true. So you have to be very careful at any stage of the entrepreneurial game. But once you're going after A-listers and B-listers who have been at it for years and years and they've built up so much credibility, even if there's a decent chance you're going to put on a good show, like if there's any crack in the armor, they see, again, they're looking for that no, that's a huge risk because if it does end up going in flames, that's their credibility, that's their reputation that's on the line there. So, you just have to be very, cognizant of that fact that you need to come through for these individuals because you're looking to not just do one virtual summit. You're looking to plant a flag in the ground that you're going to be building upon for hopefully years to come.
Excellent point. Now let's have a quick word from our sponsor, Virtual Summit Software.
Be sure to check out the speaker management tool inside your Virtual Summit software, which lets you quickly and easily recruit and manage your speakers on your virtual summit, literally eliminating hundreds of hours of work. Get more information at virtualsummit.com.
Oh, that is such a great value bomb, John, right there. You guys, absolutely. This is so true. Like most of us, when we're putting on a summit host, when we're putting on a summit, it's hard to think anything past that because it can be, difficult and a time-consuming event. But that is literally just the start. Most of us are using our virtual summits as the beginning of our customer journey, but they're additionally extremely valuable for relationship building and networking. So remember, there's always the other end of this, and you always want to over deliver. A little gem from my end, one of the things I like to do with our speakers after we run a summit is I like to follow up with them and send them something special that they're not even thinking of or knowing that's coming. What would that mean to you? Does that ever happen? And if it does, how does it make you feel?
Super rare. I can tell you a company that does that well, and it's not in the virtual summit space. It's ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels is one of those companies that they just let you know that they care about you as an affiliate, as someone that promotes their products, recommends their software, their services. I'm getting things all the time from them, like dress socks or these, huge plaques for my 2 Comma awards that I have 4 of now. I have this dream car bonuses, which you can Google and figure out what that means. That's just an example of a company that's always going above and beyond. Major holidays, they're sending me Christmas baskets and Easter baskets, and they just know who their Dream 100 are. And they've identified that Dream 100, and they're just like, you know what? I don't want these people to think that we ever forget about them. Because guess what? Kartra's around the corner, baby. And hey, Kartra's great. There's other companies similar to that are coming up and they're right behind. And there's companies above ClickFunnels as far as size-wise, like an Infusionsoft, that are always there as well. And hey, if you start losing your top affiliates, people that are talking about your brand or promoting, that's a huge risk. So that's an example I would give of something a company does. That's obviously a company that's making now $100 million a year, so they can afford to do some of these things. But, the actual cost of what that, thing might be is so minimal. It's the thought process. I could literally get a handwritten card from Mark after a virtual summit, and it would mean the world. I'd be like, wow. Essentially my job is done. Mark is now off going and doing his thing. But for him to now stop, look back, reflect, and take the time to write me a card or send me a small gift, that would be amazing. And it's super rare. It would set you above. Oh, yeah. For sure.
And that's a perfect example of it. Doesn't have to be an expensive thing. As long as it's thought out, it's so key. So if you haven't already added that into your post-summit follow-up, do that.
Do it.
Let's look at the initial aspect. So what is one thing that our summit host could do to increase their chances of getting you, for example, to speak on their summit?
So the biggest thing that I think summits do well, the ones that succeed, are they have a specific problem or pain point or obstacle that a segment of an audience has, and that summit comes in with the massive solution. And they provide the solution, and they bring in experts from different areas to talk about different possible solutions. So one massive problem and struggle, let's bring in all these experts to plug up all the holes, all the struggles, and create solutions for those things. That is critical. That is key. That is what I see virtual summits succeed in. And the ones that don't do that, they're failing in that. And so for me, when I have a virtual summit come to me and they're basically just like, hey, this is a specific struggle, an obstacle that we're looking to overcome, and we think you can specifically bring this influence, this authority, this expertise into the game. This is what we want you to talk about. They make it very clear. They're not making me do the work. Like, hey, can you give us an idea of what you would talk about around, this topic? Like, that happens all the time when I get pitched to. And I'm like, okay, now I've got to do some mental work. I got to take time to think and come up with an idea and essentially, I guess, pitch this idea to them and maybe have some back and forth with them. And now I'm scheduling a time for this interview, and then there's follow-up emails, and there's all the things that go into that. You have to make it easy. You have to say, JLD, we want to bring you in to talk about this specific topic that we know you're an expert in because of X, Y, and Z. And what does that show me? That X, Y, and Z shows me those specific examples that you've actually looked at my past. So you know what I've done, and you know the value that I can bring, all of those things. So that's critical and key. So what is that specific solution that individual is going to bring to this overall problem that your virtual summit is solving? Drive at that when you're inviting that guest onto your show, onto your summit.
That is so clutch right there. Now, what I would love to do at this point is I feel like it would be such a disservice if we didn't go into interviews, considering we have one of the top interviewers in the world sitting right here with us. I would like to hear from your aspect as a speaker, being an expert interviewer.
Yeah.
As a speaker, what is some common mistakes you see that summit hosts are doing as they're interviewing you?
Here's some massive mistakes. Some massive mistakes that interviewers are making. Number one, they're not doing what I like to call the pre-interview chats. That pre-interview chats is so key. I mean, I get it that you think mentally that you just got to flip on the video and dive right in because their time is so valuable. You might be on a back-to-back schedule, whatever that might be. It's a huge mistake. That pre-interview chat is going to be so key. It can be done correctly in 2 to 4 minutes. It really can. You got to make sure that you can pronounce their name correctly because that happens all the time. Like, I can be like, hey, Mark Wade. He's like, it's actually Mark Waddy. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. Like, who knows? Who would have known? But you just never know, no matter how clear it might look. You have to figure out that simple thing. And then you also have to say to them, do you have any questions whatsoever before we start? Any questions? Because I want to answer your questions now before we start because they probably have a question or two that are going to allow them to make that interview so much better. It's so key. It's so critical. Another thing that's really a really huge interview mistake once you actually get into the interview is your introduction of that actual guest. It is your job as the host to make that guest look so good. You better pull out every single highlight, every single accolade, every single thing that person's ever done amazing in this world. It's your job to brag on your guest because it makes you look better as a host because that's the person you brought on, this just making things up right now, but New York Times bestselling author and blah, 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 and multi-millionaire, whatever it might be, like all of those things. It's your job to brag because if you make your guest brag about themselves, because of course that individual has to be established as an authority figure, then you're putting them in a terrible situation, an absolute terrible situation. And then, listen, these are summits about, remember this, solving a problem, creating a solution to an obstacle. So don't say, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your life story. But you hear that all the time on these summits. And I'm telling you, there's ways that people can find out this individual's life story. Like they can go to their About Me page on their website. That's fine. Don't waste time with that. You brought that individual on for a specific reason. Brag about them, in a 30 to 60 seconds little bio, I like to call it. And then just dive right into the solution that your guest is going to be solving that day to that major problem. So those are just some things that people are always making a mistake upon. One thing I do want to add as well is be curious when you're an actual host. Be curious about the topic at hand. Now that's easy to say, and you probably are in the background of your mind being curious while you're listening. But you have a list of questions in front of you and you just have this desire to want to stick to that list, which is fine because you do have an agenda. But just remember that you're bringing an expert in their field, in their niche, in their industry, in their vertical. So if they say something that you don't quite get or you don't understand or you're curious about, I guarantee you 96% of the listeners are thinking and feeling the exact same way because they're not experts in that vertical either. So ask that question, be curious, go down rabbit holes. You could always just say, okay, sorry, we've been going down a rabbit hole. We got to get back to it. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with saying that. So it's just a few things. People screw up all the time and they let their guests ramble. Don't be afraid to cut your guests off. Like Mark should be cutting me off, right? Just kidding.
No, actually, that's a great point, because one of the things when you throw it to them at the beginning for them to just talk about themselves, and I've had this happen, I've made this mistake multiple times, is a lot of times they will go down their own rabbit hole
100%.
talking about themselves, and then you've just used up a third of your interview time for them to explain themselves.
Such a waste. It's such a waste. And before you go on, because this is so key, when you ask them a question that's common, and this is the problem, when you ask a common question, what happens to speakers that speak a lot, and it happens to me, it happens to Mark, it happens to everybody that speaks, we go into what the click whir happens. We just click into we know it, we said it 100 times. Hey, John, so tell me about your story. Well, I grew up in Maine. I went to college. I was an Army scholarship. But I just go into it because I'm answering their question. And it's like click whir. You've got to ask different questions. You've got to make them unique. You've got to challenge your guests. You got to make it happen.
So right there with that, make sure you're asking pointed, direct, specific questions. Don't be afraid to cut your guest off. And when you're introducing your guest, one way to do this, to set this up, is in your enrollment questionnaire, or however you're contacting those summit hosts, is just have them put exactly how they want to be introduced.
Totally.
And then you already have it and you can go through it. So
every one of my guests for my 2000, I make them actually write their own 60-word bio. And then I pull from that.
So let's go into the next aspect of this. So we just went through the interviews. We went through how to recruit. We went through the interviews. What is a way to ensure or increase the chances of getting an influencer to actually promote their summit? So actually, let's take one step back with this. And let's be real. Most influencers at this level, their promotional calendar is pretty packed. So there's not a lot of space with it. There's more opportunity to probably speak on a summit than to actually promote it in an email campaign. So what's one way that we can kind of ensure or improve the chances of getting an influencer to actually promote it without being pushy or demanding?
What's the value that individual is going to get? If you just say, hey, I want you to come on, speak on my summits, spend your time sharing your expertise on my summits, for my videos, for my interviews, for my, people that are attending and watching. And then I want you to make all of your audience, know of this as well by emailing them. It's called WIIFM. Like, what's in it for me? Like, what's in it for that A-lister? Like, you've got to make it valuable. And I can tell you right now that email's tough, for a number of reasons, because, people work hard to get their email list, and they don't just want to keep, promoting, themselves, kind of maybe saying a very similar thing. Because if I get brought on 5 summits to talk about the influence of podcasting, I'm probably going to be saying similar things on those 5 summits. So am I going to tell my audience, about these 5 summits where I'm essentially saying the same thing, even though there might be a different solution that's being, directly encountered by that summit? Like, maybe not. But the thing is, social media is a different game, because that's, it's more here today, gone tomorrow. So, Instagram is, a place that, I get a ton of traction. Instagram stories, the feed, Facebook, things like that. Like, I can see myself very realistically promoting a summit that I'm on, because it's just like a snap in time. And my audience that sees it and engages with it, they may want to go check it out, and I can do stories about it. And again, I'm kind of, bragging on myself a little bit, because I'm showing the other people that are in the summit that are maybe big names that I'm excited to be associated with, et cetera, et cetera. So for all of those reasons, I could agree to a social media initially. And then guess what? After you have that initial yes, and because I wasn't scared away from saying no, because you were wanting me to send an email out at first, but I was able to say yes to that low-hanging fruit of like, hey, John, and all we ask is just one social media post on either Instagram or Facebook. That's all we ask. That's an easy ask. It really is, because a lot of us are looking for content to post on those social media platforms anyways.
And we were talking about earlier before we went live, that one of the common turnoffs that you get from summit hosts is a demand that you must do this with this amount of posts, right? Is that a common thing that happens, and why is that such a turnoff?
It's a very common thing that you'll get, you'll read through this long, rambling, invitation to be on their summit. Then you get to the bottom and it'll basically be like, oh, and by the way, we require, our speakers to mail like 2 to 3 times in the first 4 days or whatever their specific requirement is. So that's a very common way that they put it all the time. But, kind of back to my point before I forget to make that point about the social media thing, you tell me early in the email, hey, we don't require any emails to happen at all. Immediately my guard gets put down. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting because, I just can't mail for everything. I don't even know this person yet, or maybe this summit's going to be good. And you say, this is why we want you. This is who else we're going to have. This is the value that I'm going to provide to you for being on my summit. And if you could just, do maybe a social media post when it makes sense for you, that'd be amazing. And then guess what? Fast forward a couple weeks, Mark and I jump on a video call. I've never met him before, pretend. And we just hit it off. We have a blast. The interview goes great. I'm like, this is a good dude. He's doing good things. I'm impressed. You know what, Mark? Because I like you now, and because I'm impressed with what you're producing, I know I said I'd do a social media post, but you know what? I'm going to send an email to my list as well, because now I'm excited about this. But how do I know? How can I commit to something that could be crap? So I'm not going to commit to that. But prove yourself by putting in the work, by being good as a host, by adding value to that person, maybe sending them a pre-summit gift for a little, it's called
Rule of reciprocity.
Reciprocity, yeah, that's how you say it. And guess what? Maybe now I'm just like, whoa, this is pretty cool. I'll send an email. I like Mark. I'm rooting for him now. Make it happen.
Yeah, so adding incentives, as John was saying, we look at one of the posts. So most summit hosts, what they actually do is they look at the interview as the finish line.
Yeah.
They're just so focused on getting the influencer. They got the interview, and now it's done. They can sit back.
What percentage would you put that when you're done with all the interviews? What percentage of 100% are you done?
Oh, at that point, you're looking at 80% done. You're wrapping up marketing, some email, affiliate. The affiliate.
So you're
copy.
almost done.
You're almost done. But what they do is they look at their finish line with the influencer or the speaker has done.
Got it.
That's actually only the halfway point. The relationship you can build from the interview to the launch of the summit is so important. And that's where you can actually even increase that relationship, what John was just saying. So you don't have to wait till the summit goes live and then send them a post gift. What can you do to add value to their life between the time you do the interview and when your summit launches can be crucial or key to getting the influencer to actually promote or share more.
Yeah, and you've just, again, had a 30 maybe 45-minute one-on-one video call with this individual. You're so much closer now than you were with that cold email. So the time that you now have a semi-relationship with them until launch, that's a warm relationship. From cold email to the interview, that's cold. But now you're warm. Make the most of that.
Yeah. So with that, what we were talking right there with adding value to the influencer's life in order to increase the connection or the relationship, what are some additional ways, other than sending a gift, other than adding or increasing affiliate commissions per se, what are some good ways to add value or benefits to the speaker to get them to speak and then promote the summit?
So one thing that I think would be really cool is to say, hey, listen, John, look at all of these speakers and influencers that are lined up to be interviewed by myself. Are any of them of interest for a connection? Do you want me to make a one-on-one connection here? Because now, they said yes to be on the summit. I have that connection with them. You're an influencer. They're an influencer. I can make a warm introduction email to you guys of hey, John, this is Tim Ferriss. And, Tim's going to be on the summit as well. I just wanted to connect you guys because I think you guys have a lot of synergy going on. John specifically said he'd love to have a quick conversation or a quick, email exchange. So connect away. That could be a great way that you're adding value by utilizing relationships that you've built already, through this interview process.
Please write that down. I do not see this happen nearly as enough. I'm guilty as charged as well. One of my core values is your net worth depends on your network, and relationships are the foundation essentially in business. I believe there's 2 things you need to do right in business. You need to solve a problem and build a relationship. So if you can use that opportunity that you just created through your summit to connect some of these influencers. And maybe they say, oh, I've already got connections with all of them, but it's the offer. You actually added value to them. You tried to do that. So that's really great. As we start to wrap up this episode here, John, what is one of the most common mistakes that just pops out to your mind that you see summit hosts or just summits in general doing right now? Because you've had such an opportunity to see so many summits. Let's get some feedback to the hosts on things that they should just avoid or watch out for.
I mean, I feel like we've talked a lot about those things, as we've been going forward. So I think maybe we can start right now with saying like things that I see mistakes happening post the virtual summit, because I think there's a lot of things that we haven't kind of touched upon the post at all. So post virtual summits, I mean, Mark already brought up a great point about, hey, this person just delivered for you. Maybe they posted to social media, maybe they sent an email or two out for you, whatever it is, whether the summit was a massive success or not, or somewhere in between, like they've delivered their end of the bargain. Like get them something in recognition, no matter what that is, to start building up that goodwill. And something that I see the great connectors do, the great networkers do, as Mark just said, your network is your net worth, and et cetera, and vice versa. It's so key to keep those relationships going. So if you're not having like a 1 month reminder of like, hey, reach back out to Mark, thank him again for being on the summit and ask him again if there's anything you can do or if there's a connection you can make for him or X or Y or Z, like that continued follow-up is going to pay so many dividends. And there'll be so many times where like somebody will follow up with me and I hadn't really been thinking about them, for let's say a month or two, but then like they emailed me and just said, hey, is there anything I could do for you? And the answer was really no, there wasn't, but there just so happened that there was something I can do for them. Meaning like somebody just asked, for like, a, I don't know, digital dementia expert. And, I have, the digital dementia queen here in my house right now, but I hadn't really put the two together until like that email came through. I'm like, oh my God, like there's a great connection here. And I've actually connected people just because one person that was currently in my life and then a person came back into my life with a nice follow-up thank you email for something. Boom, it's present, it's in the moment. I mean, we live in such a loud, crazy, busy world that, unless you're remaining relevant, in that person's mind, in their life, in their business, you're going to become a forgotten commodity. So where's the follow-up? It doesn't end with the summit ending and with, that kind of wrap up. Like keep those relationships going because you just never know how powerful that can be. And there's some tools that do this for you. Like I love using Boomerang on Gmail where I send an email to somebody and I just click a little box that just says, hey, Boomerang this email back to me in a month. And so I'll send the email and then a month later, that email will get boomerang back to my inbox. And I'll just be like, oh yeah, I sent this guy an email a month ago, this girl an email a month ago. Let me follow up on that. So I think that kind of follow-up is so key and literally so few people do it.
That's relationship building 101. To build a relationship, you have to stay in touch. You have to communicate. And I think that's a great idea. Like that's such a great value bomb, especially like not going for the ask, because so many of us are constantly being asked for things just to get an email with an offer like, hey, is there anything I can do for you? Like that's going to stand out and you're going to, even if there's nothing like you were saying that you can get from that or have anything to ask, that person's going to stay top of mind longer. So that's really, really great information there. Now let's have a quick word from our sponsor.
With the Ever Summit feature inside the Virtual Summit software, you can rerun your summit as if it were live, ongoing forever with one click of a button. This now lets you continue to use your summit forever, bringing in qualified and engaged leads every month into your business. Get more information at virtualsummit.com.
As we're wrapping this up now, JLD, a lot of our summit hosts here are running summits and they're looking for influencers and speakers to be on it. I'm sure you have opportunities and things that you would be willing to do. If one of our summit hosts wanted to reach out to you to be on their summit, what's a couple good topics or like one good topic and what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. I will say first, I want to give a tactic that I think is really key when you're reaching out to a prospective summit guest. Because you want to lower all barriers. You want to make it as easy as possible for that person to say yes. Because as we've both mentioned a couple times, A-listers, B-listers, people that are busy, nothing's going on. They're looking for a reason to say no. So you just ask me a question like, hey, listen, I know you're busy. Here's my calendar if you want to click on this link right here. And you can schedule a time that works for you. But alternatively, I'm sure being, the individual that you are, you have your own calendar link for days like this. So so send me your calendar link and let me schedule a time that I know works for you because it's on your calendar. And guess what? Like people like myself and other like high level, entrepreneurs and influencers, we have that set up. And so when somebody asks me for it, I'm so much more likely to give it to them because they asked me for it. And so I'm like, well, hey, this person gets it. They just get it. And so I send them my scheduler link, which is for 1 day per month. I block off 20 different spots for podcasts, for me to be a guest on podcasts, for me to be interviewed for summits. I block off 1 day per month to do that. So I will never schedule on somebody else's scheduler, but they can schedule on my scheduler. And so when you ask for it, you shall receive at a much higher level than if you don't ask for it. So that is just one hack that I know I say yes to a lot more when people are just like, hey, send me your schedule. I'll make it happen. Boom, I send it to them. They book and it's on my day. So I'm happy to do it because that's my day that I've committed to giving for these podcasts, for these summits, for these fill in the blanks. That's my 1 day per month. So that's just the thoughts to do for sure. And, for me, listen, I'm an expert on podcasting. I love speaking about funnels. I love speaking about actually keeping money that you make in this world, which is one reason why myself and Mark live in this lovely paradise called Puerto Rico. So any of those topics, I'm an expert in, and I've proven myself for over 7 years rocking it, and hopefully 7 more.
And the best way to get in touch with you, also where they can find you out on social.
Sure. Well, all the magic happens at eofire.com. eofire.com is the website. My podcast, which I would love for you to listen to and subscribe to, Entrepreneurs on Fire. And all the socials, John Lee Dumas.
Make sure you check out the podcast. It is incredible. I've been listening to it for over 5 years now.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible one. It doesn't matter where you're at in your level of entrepreneurship. There's always amazing insights, tactics, and strategies you can get to that. Also, I know, John, if you're looking to get started in podcasting, I know a lot of us out there, we talk about the strategy of using your summits for reproducing for content. And one of those strategies, we also talk about using it on podcasts. If you haven't gotten started with a podcast, I know John has a free course that you could check out. freepodcastcourse.com. freepodcastcourse.com. It's free. So you can get there, you can get that, and that way you're actually getting 2 for 1 when you do run your summit. So it's pretty incredible. JLD, I'm going to leave it with you to have one. If you have any last word of wisdom or anything you want to share with the guests before I wrap this up.
It's a short Chinese proverb. If you want to be, do. And it's really that simple, my friends. It really is. If you want to be a podcaster, podcast. If you want to run virtual summits, run virtual summits. There's only one way to do the thing you want to become, and that is to actually do the thing. Become the thing you want to do, and that's to do the thing. So that is so critical, my friends, that you actually take the step and put in the reps and just do it. Mark was horrible at virtual summits when he started. I was horrible at podcasting when I started. Everybody was bad when they took that first step, but he's put in the reps. I put in the reps. We get a little bit better every single time we do. And now that we've done it hundreds and thousands of times, we're getting pretty good. So think about it. Put in the reps. If you want to be, do.
Summit hosts, make sure you go over, check out JLD over at EO Fire. I thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, letting us shoot this interview, record this interview here at EO Fire headquarters. Been an amazing, probably it's got to be one of my funnest, most fun interviews I've done.
I would say number one.
And definitely with an amazing guest right there.
And friends.
Now for my virtual summit hosts, I believe in you. And you can do this. Summits are by far one of the most powerful strategies to build your list, launch your platform, make more money, and create an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. Just don't get caught up in that analysis paralysis. As JLD was just saying, it's better to get started. Imperfect action is better than no action. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on the Virtual Summit podcast. Head over to the show notes to check out all the links and resources from this episode, and be sure to grab your free trial of the Virtual Summit software.
Now, I want to end this episode by saying to all the Summit hosts listening right now, I believe in you, and you can do this. Summits are by far one of the most powerful ways to quickly grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and most importantly, make an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. So don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, because the world needs to hear your message, and there are people who are waiting for you to help them. So just get started, because imperfect action is always better than no action. Thank you, and see you on the next episode.